I'm Claudia, 34, and I built Skylight Aviation from nothing into the most exclusive private jet service on both coasts. My parents, both prestigious attorneys, called me their disappointment throughout my life. They wanted a lawyer. I became a pilot and CEO instead. Never thought our worlds would collide until yesterday when they walked into my newest terminal with their biggest client. Before I share how my parents' faces changed when their client recognized me as the CEO, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever been underestimated. Growing up in Beacon Hill, Boston's most affluent neighborhood, meant living under the weight of expectations. Our brownstone townhouse with its polished mahogany banisters and leather-bound law books lining every wall felt more like a prestigious law office than a home. My parents, Harold and Margaret Williams, weren't just attorneys. They were legal royalty partners at Williams & Burke, the firm their families had built 3 generations ago. "Claudia, anything less than perfection is failure," my father would say, reviewing my report card at the dining room table. Even with straight A's, he'd find the 196% and tap at it with his Mont Blanc pen. "What happened here?" My mother would sigh, adjusting her pearl necklace. "The Williamses are top of their class. Always." From kindergarten, the path was predetermined: perfect grades, debate team Ivy League, then Harvard Law just like them, their parents, and so on. The framed law degrees and bar admission certificates crowded our walls like trophies. Family dinner conversations revolved around precedent-setting cases and legal strategy, not childhood dreams or simple joys. When I was 9, I brought home my honor roll certificate, beaming with pride. My father glanced at it and asked, "But are you valedictorian?" When I shook my head, he handed it back. "Then there's room for improvement." That same year, my science fair project on aerodynamics won second place. I'd spent weeks crafting miniature wings and testing them in the makeshift wind tunnel I'd built in our garage. Aviation. My mother frowned, barely looking at my display board. "That's hardly practical, Claudia. Law is about precedent and logic, not flying." While other parents displayed their children's achievements proudly on refrigerators, mine were filed away in a drawer if they didn't directly advance the legal dynasty narrative. When I was 12, I started making aviation-themed jewelry, small silver airplane charms on delicate chains, earrings shaped like wings, and sold them to classmates. I made $300 in my first month. Trinkets, my father called them when he discovered my little business. This time could be spent on mock trial or debate club. The only person who ever encouraged my dreams was Grandma Rose, my father's mother. Unlike her son, she'd smile at my aviation magazines and airplane sketches. "Your grandfather wanted to be a pilot before the family pushed him into law," she whispered once while we baked cookies in her kitchen. Sometimes I wonder if he would have been happier flying. The contrast between my parents' disappointment and my younger brother Adam's golden child status became increasingly obvious. 3 years my junior, Adam took naturally to their expectations, memorizing legal terms for fun, arguing effectively by age 10, and proudly declaring his intentions to become the best Williams lawyer yet. "See how focused your brother is," they'd say, while Adam smirked behind them. For my 16th birthday, while my parents gifted me a set of law school preparation books, Grandma Rose handed me a small envelope. Inside was a certificate for a scenic flight over Boston Harbor. "Don't tell your parents until after," she winked. The day of that flight changed everything. Soaring above the city, feeling the gentle movements of the aircraft, responding to the pilot's commands, I felt a freedom I'd never known in my carefully orchestrated life. "Want to take the controls for a minute?" the pilot asked. My hands trembled as I gripped the yoke, making the smallest adjustments, feeling the aircraft respond to my touch. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty what I wanted to do with my life. "How much do flying lessons cost?" I asked as we landed. When I told my parents about the flight, their reactions were predictably dismissive. "It's just a phase," my mother said, barely looking up from her brief. "Flying planes is for people who couldn't succeed academically," my father added. "Williams women become attorneys, not glorified bus drivers." Their words stung, but something had awakened in me. I began babysitting on weekends and after school, saving every dollar. 6 months later, I had enough for my first lesson. I told my parents I was studying at the library and took the bus to the small regional airport instead. The first time I flew solo, circling the pattern 3 times before landing perfectly on the center line, tears streamed down my face. Not from fear, but from the pure joy of finally finding something that felt like it was truly mine. When my parents inevitably discovered my secret lessons thanks to Adam finding my logbook and promptly reporting it, the argument that followed was explosive. "You've been lying to us," my father thundered. "Sneaking around wasting money on this hobby." "It's not a hobby," I countered, finding courage I didn't know I had. "It's what I want to do with my life." My mother's laugh was cold. "Darling, be realistic. The aviation industry is unstable and unglamorous. You're a Williams. You're meant for greater things." That night I cried into my pillow, torn between the path they demanded and the sky that called to me. Despite my passion for aviation, I compromised by enrolling at my parents' alma mater, but for business school rather than law. It wasn't flying, but it wasn't surrendering entirely either. "At least business can be useful for managing the firm someday," my father conceded, though his disappointment remained palpable. Boston University's brick buildings and ivy-covered walls felt like an extension of my parents' realm. Students whose parents were judges, attorneys, and politicians filled my classes, many already speaking the language of legacy and tradition. Among them, I felt like an imposter with wings strapped down. During my sophomore year, I met Professor Jameson, a former entrepreneur who recognized something in me that my parents never had. "Miss Williams, your analysis of the airline industry case study was exceptional," he said after class one day. "You have a unique perspective on operational efficiency in aviation." For once, someone saw my interest in flight as an asset, not a disappointment. Under his mentorship, I began developing a business concept that combined my passions, a boutique private aviation service that would offer unparalleled personalization and efficiency. For my final business project senior year, I created a comprehensive business plan. While other students presented standard retail concepts or tech startups, I unveiled Skylight Aviation, a vision for revolutionizing private air travel. Professor Jameson gave me an A+ with a note, "Not just viable, exceptional. You've identified a gap in the market that others have missed." Flush with validation, I made the mistake of showing my business plan to my parents during Thanksgiving break. We sat in the formal living room, the fire crackling as they flipped through my meticulously prepared binder. "This is interesting," my father said in the tone he used for junior associates' flawed arguments. "But hardly realistic," my mother added, closing the binder. "The capital requirements alone make this a fantasy. I've calculated everything, including potential investors and—" "Claudia," my father interrupted, "it's time to be practical. Law school applications are due soon." The conversation shifted immediately to Adam's pre-law achievements, as if my business plan had never existed. He'd already secured a prestigious summer internship at a federal judge's chambers, a coup for a sophomore. That Christmas, my parents hosted their annual holiday party for the firm's partners and their families. While introducing Adam to everyone as our future legal star, they presented me with hesitant pauses. "And this is Claudia, she's still finding her way." Later that evening, I overheard my mother talking to Mrs. Harrington, another partner's wife. "We're still hopeful she'll come around to law school. This business school detour is just taking longer than we expected." I slipped away from the party and sat on the roof deck, watching planes approach Logan Airport, their lights blinking steadily across the night sky. Each one represented someone going somewhere with purpose, something I desperately wanted. In my junior year, I secured an internship at Aerodynamics, a small aviation management company at Boston's regional airport. The position paid minimally, but offered something priceless, hands-on experience in the industry I loved. I learned about flight operations, customer service for high-net-worth clients, and the logistics of private aviation. My graduation day should have been triumphant. I graduated with honors in business administration, with a specialization in aviation management. As my name was called, I searched the audience for my parents' faces, hoping finally to see pride. I found them easily, my mother in her tailored navy suit, my father with his characteristic stern expression. They applauded politely, nothing more. At the reception afterward, while other parents took endless photos and made celebratory toasts, my father cleared his throat and asked, So when will you be taking the LSAT? The question ignited something in me, perhaps the accumulated years of disapproval, perhaps newfound confidence from my accomplishments. I'm not taking the LSAT, Dad. I'm going to California to work in aviation. His face hardened. This rebellious phase has gone on long enough. You've chosen a dead-end path. When will you grow up and accept your responsibilities to this family? My mother touched his arm, not to calm him, but to redirect. Harold, the Jacobsons are waiting to speak with us about Adam's internship. They walked away, leaving me alone with my diploma and the crushing weight of never being enough. That night, I packed my belongings and booked a one-way ticket to Los Angeles. Before leaving Boston, I visited Grandma Rose to say goodbye. Her eyes, clouded with cataracts but still sharp with understanding, studied my face. "You're leaving," she stated simply. "I have to, Grandma. There's nothing for me here except disappointment." She nodded slowly, then reached for a small jewelry box on her side table. From it, she withdrew an envelope. "I've been saving this for when you'd need it most." Inside was a cashier's check for $25,000. "Your grandfather left it to me, and I'm giving it to you." "Grandma, I can't." She closed my fingers around the envelope. "Fly, girl. Fly as high and as far as your wings will take you." We both knew it might be the last time we'd see each other. At 87, her health was failing. I hugged her tightly, inhaling her familiar scent of lavender and peppermint. As I headed for the door, she called after me, "Claudia, make sure you look back only to see how far you've come, never to second-guess your path." Those words became my mantra as I boarded the plane the next morning, leaving behind the suffocating weight of family legacy for the unknown skies of the West Coast. Landing in Los Angeles with 2 suitcases, my business plan, and Grandma Rose's $25,000, I felt terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. The California sun seemed brighter than Boston's, the possibilities, as vast as the Pacific Ocean I could see from the airport. I found a tiny studio apartment in Hawthorne, deliberately chosen for its proximity to small airports. The place was barely 400 square feet, a far cry from my parents' 5,000 square foot Beacon Hill home, but it was mine. The freedom to hang aviation maps on the walls instead of family portraits of stern-faced judges and attorneys felt revolutionary. Reality set in quickly. In Boston, the Williams name opened doors. In Los Angeles, I was just another transplant, with dreams bigger than her bank account. $25,000 wouldn't last long in Southern California, especially not when starting a business. I secured 2 jobs, customer service representative at a regional airport during the day, and bartending at an upscale restaurant frequented by entertainment executives at night. The schedule was punishing, often working 16 hours straight, catching naps in my car between shifts, but every dollar brought me closer to my dream. "You're from Boston. Your parents must be proud," customers would sometimes say, making conversation. I'd smile tightly and mix their drinks, swallowing the truth that my parents had stopped taking my calls, that the last email from my mother had been a link to law school application deadlines. 6 months of this grueling schedule taught me more than 4 years of business school. I learned to read people quickly, to anticipate needs before they were verbalized, to solve problems with limited resources, all skills that would prove invaluable for my future company. My apartment walls gradually transformed into a vision board, photographs of private aircraft, successful women entrepreneurs, and maps with potential route networks. Every night, no matter how exhausted, I refined my business plan, researched competitors, and identified gaps in the market. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. While bartending, I served a woman named Tara, a tech executive celebrating a successful product launch. We struck up a conversation about travel headaches. "The worst part of commercial flying is the lack of control," she said, sipping her martini. "Even in first class, you're still at the mercy of schedules, delays, crowds. Private aviation eliminates those variables," I replied. "But the industry still treats clients like transactions rather than partnerships." Her eyebrow raised. "Sounds like you know something about it." Before I could second-guess myself, I shared my vision, a boutique aviation service focusing on ultra personalization, not just luxury amenities, but truly understanding each client's preferences from the temperature of the cabin to their preferred reading materials. Interesting, she said, sliding her business card across the bar. I'd like to hear more. 2 weeks later, after a detailed presentation in her office, Tara became my first investor with $150,000 for a 15% stake in Skylight Aviation. Her investment, combined with Grandma Rose's seed money, allowed me to secure a small, pre-owned Cessna Citation. Not the newest or largest private jet, but a solid foundation. The morning I took possession of that aircraft, running my hand along its sleek white fuselage, with the simple Skylight logo I designed myself, I finally felt like more than just the Williams disappointment. I was Claudia, founder and CEO. Finding clients proved challenging. Legacy aviation companies had decades-long relationships with wealthy individuals and corporations. I was the outsider, the unknown. I leveraged Tara's network, offering heavily discounted inaugural flights to her colleagues. My first client was Marcus Johnson, another tech executive, who needed to reach Seattle for an emergency meeting after commercial flights were grounded due to weather. I'll never forget my anxiety that day, checking weather reports obsessively, personally inspecting the aircraft 3 times, briefing the contract pilot I'd hired about the client's preferences. When Marcus arrived, I greeted him personally, helping with his luggage, ensuring the cabin was stocked with his preferred sparkling water and the financial magazines he'd requested. "This is different," he remarked, looking around the thoughtfully prepared cabin. "Different is exactly what we're aiming for," I replied, hiding my nervousness behind a professional smile. When he returned 2 days later and booked 5 more flights, I knew I'd found my market advantage, treating each client not as a passenger, but as a partner whose time and comfort were sacred. Word spread gradually. I reinvested every dollar of profit back into the business, upgrading our booking software, hiring a part-time customer service representative, securing a small office at the airport. I worked maniacal hours, often sleeping on the office couch to save commuting time. Month 18 brought a crisis. A major mechanical issue with our aircraft coincided with 3 important bookings. The repair costs would deplete our emergency fund, and canceling flights would damage our growing reputation. I called every contact, finally finding a charter company willing to lease us an aircraft at a rate that would barely break even. For 48 hours straight, I managed logistics personally, greeting each client, explaining the situation with transparency, while ensuring their experience remained exceptional. Instead of complaints, we received appreciation for our honesty and problem solving. One client even increased his booking frequency, impressed by our commitment to service despite challenges. Through it all, communication with my family dwindled. Monthly calls to my parents became quarterly, then semi-annual perfunctory exchanges. "Still with that little plane company?" my father would ask, as if I were working a summer job rather than building a business. "Adam has made junior partner," my mother would interject, not waiting for my response. Only Grandma Rose remained supportive, though her health continued declining. During one visit home, I found her frailer than before, but her eyes lit up when I shared stories of Skylight's growth. "I knew you'd find your wings," she whispered, her once strong hand now papery in mine. 2 months later, I received the call that she had passed peacefully in her sleep. I flew home for the funeral, standing slightly apart from my family, as they received condolences from Boston's legal elite. My parents acknowledged my presence with stiff nods. Adam avoided eye contact entirely. At the reading of her will, Grandma Rose had left me her engagement ring with a note to remind you that valuable things come in small packages and that beauty can be found at great heights. And keep soaring. That night in my hotel room, I clutched the ring and wept, not just for Grandma Rose, but for the family approval I still secretly craved, despite my growing success. I channeled that grief into determination, vowing to build something so undeniably successful that even my parents couldn't dismiss it. Returning to California, I threw myself into expansion with renewed purpose. Each setback became a learning opportunity, each small victory a stepping stone. The business wasn't just about proving my parents wrong anymore. It was about honoring Grandma Rose's belief in me and creating something meaningful that was entirely my own. 5 years passed in a blur of growth challenges and hard-earned victories. What had begun as a one-aircraft operation with a part-time employee had transformed into Skylight Aviation, a fleet of 8 luxury jets, 42 employees, and a client list that included tech billionaires, entertainment executives, and Fortune 500 companies. Our headquarters, a sleek 2-story building at Van Nuys Airport, featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the runway, modern minimalist furnishings, and a state-of-the-art operations center. Where once I'd slept on an office couch, we now had dedicated spaces for client consultations, flight planning, and crew briefings. My tiny apartment had been replaced by a house in the Hollywood Hills, with a view of the city I'd conquered against all odds. My day typically began at 5 a.m., reviewing overnight operations and preparing for the morning executive team meeting. My assistant Samantha would have my schedule meticulously organize client calls, vendor negotiations, aircraft inspections, and the endless details involved in maintaining a reputation for perfection. "Coffee with 2 pumps of vanilla, no cream," Samantha would announce, placing the cup on my desk along with the daily operations report. "Marcus wants 10 minutes before the exec meeting to discuss the Denver expansion." Marcus Johnson, my first real client, had become my chief operations officer 2 years prior. His tech background and analytical mind complemented my aviation focus and client-centered approach. He was also the closest thing I had to a friend, having witnessed Skylight's growth from its precarious beginnings. "The Denver facility is ready ahead of schedule," Marcus reported that morning, sliding architectural renderings across my desk. "We can start operations next month if the final inspection's clear." I traced the Skylight logo on the building facade in the rendering, still sometimes amazed by how far we'd come. "Book it, and let's send personalized announcements to our Mountain State clients." Our approach to private aviation had disrupted an industry accustomed to standardization behind a luxury veneer. While competitors offered the same amenities to all clients, we created detailed preference profiles, from cabin temperature and lighting to meal specifications and conversation preferences. Some clients wanted engaging discussion, others complete silence. This attention to detail had earned us a profile in Forbes titled, "The Aviation Tailors How Skylight is Redefining Luxury Air Travel." The article highlighted our 97% client retention rate, unheard of in an industry where wealth allowed customers to constantly seek the next best thing. Success had come at personal costs. Romantic relationships had been sacrificed to 14-hour workdays and constant travel. Friendships outside the company had withered from neglect. Even my health had suffered periods of strained pneumonia after working through a flu, stress-induced insomnia, the weight fluctuations of someone who often forgot to eat. The one unexpected connection that remained was with Adam, my brother. Our conversations, initially rare and awkward, had gradually evolved into monthly calls. To my surprise, he had begun expressing subtle dissatisfaction with his life at our parents' firm. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm living my life or the one they programmed for me," he'd admitted during one late-night call. "You were brave to leave." "It wasn't bravery," I'd replied, watching lights of aircraft on final approach to LAX from my office window. "It was survival." His chuckle held no humor. "Maybe that's what I'm missing." As for my parents, our interactions had become formulaic exchanges of basic life updates. They acknowledged my business, never my company or success, with the detached interest one might show a distant acquaintance's hobby. "The aviation industry seems to be doing well enough these days," my father had commented during our last conversation, as if my achievements were merely the result of fortunate market conditions. "Your company has that website now," my mother had observed, seemingly unaware that Skylight had been digital since its inception and had recently won an award for our client interface. Their dismissal still stung, though I'd built a fortress of success to shield myself from their disapproval. There were nights after particularly triumphant days when I'd catch myself reaching for the phone to call them before remembering that their response would inevitably diminish my joy. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had clients who treated me with more respect and warmth than my own family. My name was recognized in aviation circles and business publications, yet remained a footnote in my parents' narrative of our family. In my more honest moments, I recognized that part of my drive still stemmed from a desire to earn their approval, an approval that seemed perpetually out of reach, regardless of my accomplishments. The decision to expand to the East Coast came from sound business strategy. Many of our clients traveled frequently between California and the Northeast. Boston was the logical choice for our eastern hub, a major city with significant business traffic and fewer competitors than New York. If I'm being completely honest, though, there was a small, hopeful part of me that thought establishing Skylight in my hometown might finally make my success real to my parents. Perhaps seeing the operation firsthand, witnessing other Bostonians' respect for what I'd built, would break through their dismissive shell. The Boston facility was my most ambitious project, yet a private terminal at Logan Airport, with exclusive amenities, direct tarmac access, and the personalized service that had become our trademark. I personally oversaw every detail of its development, from architectural plans to staff training. When construction finished ahead of schedule, I sent formal invitations to my parents for the grand opening gala, embossed cardstock with gold foil, the kind of touch they'd appreciate. Their response came via my father's assistant. Mr. and Mrs. Williams send their regrets, but have a prior commitment with the Bar Association that evening. They wish you success with your venture. I told myself I wasn't disappointed, that I'd expected nothing more. But the carefully worded rejection delegated to an assistant confirmed what I'd always known: in their eyes, my achievements would never measure up to the legal legacy I'd abandoned. With the Boston facility complete and staffing finalized, I threw myself into preparations for our soft opening, a week of invitation-only flights for select East Coast clients before the official launch. Standing in the empty terminal the night before, I surveyed what I'd built with a mixture of pride and lingering melancholy. "We're ready, Ms. Williams," said Thomas, the Boston facility manager I'd personally selected and trained. "Yes," I agreed, running my hand along the reception desk's polished surface. "I believe we are." I couldn't have imagined then how the following day would finally bring the confrontation and potential reconciliation I'd both craved and dreaded for years. The morning of our Boston facility's soft launch dawned clear and cool, a perfect New England fall day. I'd been up since 4 a.m., reviewing checklists and confirming that every detail met Skylight's exacting standards. The facility gleamed with newness, polished floors reflecting the morning light, the air lightly scented with our signature blend of sandalwood and citrus, fresh flowers precisely arranged at the reception desk. "First scheduled arrival is at noon, Ms. Williams," Thomas reported during our final walkthrough. "A tech executive from Cambridge and his team." I nodded, adjusting a cushion on one of the leather lounge chairs. "I'll greet them personally." The day progressed smoothly, clients arriving expressing appreciation for the facility's elegance and efficiency, departing on our jets with the seamless experience we'd perfected. By 6 p.m., I was reviewing the day's operations with Thomas when my phone chimed with a notification. "Last-minute booking request." I noted, scanning the details. "Williams and Burke requesting departure tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. to New York. Party of 3. My heart stuttered. Williams and Burke, my parents' firm. I hadn't made the connection immediately because I'd delegated system alerts to staff, but this particular notification had been flagged for my attention due to the short notice and VIP status automatically assigned to top-tier law firms. "I don't recognize the client, Richardson Industries," Thomas commented, looking over my shoulder at the booking details. "James Richardson," I murmured, "real estate development mogul. He's been my parents' biggest client for at least a decade." Thomas glanced at me clearly, recognizing my personal connection. "Shall I handle this booking, Ms. Williams?" Pride warred with curiosity. Part of me wanted to avoid any interaction with anyone connected to my parents. Another part, the part still seeking validation despite my success, wanted to be present, to be seen. "No, I'll oversee this one personally," I decided. It's a good opportunity to ensure our VIP protocols are functioning correctly before the official opening. I spent the next hour ensuring everything would be flawless for the morning departure, selecting our newest G650 for the flight briefing the crew about the passengers' likely preferences based on what I remembered about James Richardson from Boston's social events, arranging for fresh pastries from the bakery my mother had always favored. By 9 p.m., most staff had departed, leaving only the night manager and security. I should have gone to my hotel, but something kept me at the facility reviewing procedures that didn't need reviewing, inspecting elements that had already been inspected multiple times. "You should rest, Ms. Williams," Thomas suggested gently before leaving. "Tomorrow will be another full day." I nodded, but remained finally settling into one of the private client suites with my laptop working on expansion projections for the coming quarter. The facility had grown quiet, the only sounds the gentle hum of climate control and the occasional voice of the night manager answering calls. Just after 10 p.m., the front desk phone rang. I heard the night manager's voice, then rapid footsteps approaching my door. "Ms. Williams, I apologize for the interruption," she said after knocking. "The Williams and Burke party has arrived. They were in the area for dinner and asked to see the facility before tomorrow's flight. Now," I glanced at my watch momentarily flustered. "It's quite late." Then Mr. Richardson insisted, saying they wouldn't require a full tour, just wanted to confirm the location for morning. They're very insistent. I straightened my blazer and smoothed my hair. "Of course. I'll greet them personally." Walking through the quiet terminal, I mentally prepared myself for the possibility of seeing my parents. Perhaps they wouldn't come themselves. They might have sent associates. But as I rounded the corner to the main reception area, I froze. There they stood, my father in his trademark charcoal suit, my mother in a navy dress with her ever-present pearl necklace, accompanied by a tall man I recognized as James Richardson. They hadn't noticed me yet, absorbed in conversation as the night manager offered to take their coats. "The aircraft is a Gulfstream G650, my father was saying to Richardson. "Top of the line, apparently." "I've heard good things about this new service," Richardson replied, "exclusive detail-oriented. Quite the departure from the typical charter operations." My mother made a small dismissive sound. "Well, aviation services are all essentially the same, aren't they?" "You get on a plane, you get off a plane," Richardson chuckled. "I'm not sure my wife would agree. She's quite particular about her flying experiences." "Speaking of family," my father said, his voice taking on the artificially warm tone he used for client relations, "how is your daughter's gallery doing?" "Thriving," Richardson beamed. "She's made quite a name for herself in the art world. And your children still following the Williams legal tradition." My father straightened, pride evident in his posture. "Adam made junior partner last year, youngest in the firm's history." "And your daughter?" Richardson asked. "I recall you mentioning her at a function years ago." I held my breath, stepping slightly back into the shadows of the hallway. My mother's sigh was audible even from where I stood. "She's in California. Some sort of transportation business." "Aviation," my father corrected stiffly. "Private jets." Richardson's eyebrows raised with interest. "Really, that's quite entrepreneurial." My mother's laugh held no warmth. "She's just a disappointment, honestly. Had every advantage, the best education, our connections, and chose to throw it all away." The words hit me like a physical blow. After all these years, all I'd accomplished and nothing had changed. I was still the family disappointment, the failure who'd rejected their path. Despite running a multi-million-dollar company, despite industry recognition, despite everything in their eyes, I remained deficient. I considered retreating to my office, having another staff member handle their visit. But something in me, perhaps the last remnant of the need for parental approval, perhaps simple professional pride, propelled me forward. "Good evening," I said, stepping into the reception area with the practiced smile I'd perfected for challenging client interactions. "Welcome to Skylight Aviation. I'm Claudia Williams, founder and CEO." The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, disbelief, then something that might have been embarrassment. My mother's hand flew to her pearls, a nervous habit from my childhood. James Richardson looked between us, confusion evident. Claudia, my father finally managed his voice unnaturally stiff. What a surprise. We weren't aware this was your establishment. My mother added her emphasis, suggesting she still couldn't quite believe it. Richardson's gaze sharpened with sudden understanding. Wait, this is your daughter's company? He asked, my parents' genuine surprise in his voice. Before they could answer, I extended my hand professionally to him. Mr. Richardson, it's a pleasure to meet you formally. I believe we were briefly introduced at one of my parents' functions years ago, though I doubt you'd remember. He shook my hand with newfound interest. Skylight Aviation, I've read about your company in the Wall Street Journal. You've made quite impressive inroads in an established industry. From the corner of my eye, I could see my parents' matching expressions of discomfort caught between their dismissal of my career and their client's apparent respect for it. We're particularly proud of our client-centered approach, I continued smoothly, addressing Richardson, while my parents stood awkwardly to the side. Would you like to see the aircraft you'll be flying tomorrow? It's already prepared. Absolutely, Richardson agreed enthusiastically. As I led them through the terminal toward the tarmac where our jets were housed, I maintained a professional demeanor, explaining our facilities, services, and unique approach. Richardson asked thoughtful questions, while my parents followed silently, their discomfort almost palpable. The attention to detail is remarkable, Richardson commented as we approached the Gulf Stream. My wife will be particularly impressed that you've noted her preference for orchids rather than roses. I smiled. Our client profiles are comprehensive. We believe true luxury is in personalization, not standardization. As the sleek white aircraft came into view, its distinctive skylight logo illuminated by the tarmac lights, I allowed myself a moment of silent pride. This was mine, built from nothing but determination and a vision my family had dismissed as fantasy. Richardson whistled appreciatively. Impressive machine. Wait until you see the interior, I replied, gesturing toward the aircraft stairs. As we all moved toward the plane, Richardson turned to my parents with undisguised bewilderment. And you said she was a disappointment. This operation is extraordinary. My mother flushed crimson. My father cleared his throat repeatedly, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood. Neither responded directly. Standing at the foot of the stairs, I faced a choice. Continue the professional facade, or finally address the elephants on the tarmac, my parents' lifelong dismissal of my choices, and their obvious discomfort at being confronted with my success. The moment stretched between us, weighted with decades of unspoken words and unresolved feelings. As we boarded the G650, I maintained my professional composure, while conducting the personalized tour I would give any VIP client. The aircraft's interior gleamed with subdued luxury buttery leather seats and cream accents of brushed gold custom wood veneer that I'd personally selected for its warm honey tones. All our aircraft feature customizable cabin zones, I explained, gesturing to the forward seating area. This configuration allows for a working meeting during flight, while the aft cabin can be arranged for dining or relaxation. Richardson nodded appreciatively, running his hand along the seat material. Remarkable attention to detail. And you founded this company yourself. From the ground up, I confirmed, acutely aware of my parents hovering uncomfortably behind us. We started with one aircraft and a commitment to redefining the private aviation experience. Fascinating, Richardson said, glancing pointedly at my parents. You must be incredibly proud of what your daughter has built. My mother's smile was tight. It's quite nice. Better than we expected, my father added, as if granting minimal approval was a significant concession. The flight attendant, Jessica, appeared from the galley. Would anyone care for refreshments? We have Mr. Richardson's preferred Macallan 25 sparkling water with lemon for Mrs. Williams and black coffee for Mr. Williams. My parents' surprise at being known was evident. I'd instructed Jessica based on memories of their preferences from years ago, a small demonstration of the attention to detail that had built my company. You remember how we take our drinks? My mother said, more statement than question. I met her gaze directly. I remember everything. The subtext wasn't lost on any of us. Richardson excused himself to make a phone call in the aft cabin, leaving me momentarily alone with my parents. The air between us felt charged with unspoken words. Your company seems Established, my father offered stiffly, as if the acknowledgement physically pained him. We're the fastest growing private aviation firm on the West Coast, I replied evenly. This Boston facility completes our coast-to-coast service network. My mother adjusted her pearls, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood confrontations. You could have told us you were opening in Boston. I sent invitations to the grand opening, I countered. Your assistant declined. We've been very busy with the Westlake merger, my father said defensively. Adam's been leading the team. Always back to Adam, even now. Of course, I said, keeping my voice neutral. The firm always comes first. Richardson returned before they could respond, his enthusiasm breaking the tension. My wife is thrilled about tomorrow's flight. She's already texting me about the custom amenities you mentioned. Our pleasure, Mr. Richardson. At Skylight, we believe every detail matters. The tour continued with Richardson asking informed questions about operations and expansion plans. My parents remained largely silent, exchanging glances, whenever Richardson expressed admiration for some aspect of the business. As we prepared to leave the aircraft, Richardson's phone rang. He checked the screen and frowned. I need to take this. Financial markets never sleep, unfortunately. He stepped away, leaving me alone with my parents once more near the aircraft's exit. My father cleared his throat. You've done well for yourself. He said the words seeming to cost him considerable effort. You've been lucky, my mother added quickly. Aviation has been growing as a sector. There it was, the inability to acknowledge that my success came from vision and hard work, not fortunate market conditions or luck. The same dismissal I'd heard throughout my life, just in slightly different packaging. Something shifted inside me. Perhaps it was the confidence built through years of overcoming obstacles. Perhaps it was standing on my own aircraft, surrounded by the physical manifestation of my dreams. But suddenly, I didn't need their approval anymore. Not actively, achingly as I once had. It wasn't luck, I said quietly but firmly. It was persistence, innovation, and believing in myself when no one else would. Especially not my family. My mother's eyes widened at my directness. My father's jaw tightened. I stopped needing your approval years ago. I continued, surprising myself with the calm honesty in my voice. But I never stopped wanting it. That's the difference between need and want. I built this company despite you telling me it was impossible, despite you calling me a disappointment to anyone who would listen, including your clients. My father's face flushed. We never said, I heard you tonight, I interrupted. And it's not the first time. But here's what I've realized. Your definition of success was never going to accommodate my dreams. And that's okay. I've made peace with that. My mother's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Claudia, surely you understand we wanted security for you. The law offers, and I know what you wanted, I said, but you never asked what I needed. Richardson returned oblivious to the tension. All sorted. Now about tomorrow's departure. We were interrupted by Jessica approaching with a tablet. Ms. Williams, we've received a request from Mr. Richardson's team for tomorrow. They're asking about accommodation for additional passengers. I nodded, switching seamlessly back into CEO mode. I'll handle it personally. Mr. Richardson, we can adjust the manifest without any issues. How many additional guests should we expect? As I discussed logistics with Richardson, I noticed my parents watching me with expressions I'd never seen before, something between confusion and reassessment, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. When we returned to the terminal, Richardson turned to my parents. Harold, Margaret, I had no idea your daughter was behind Skylight. The firm's been using inferior services when we could have been supporting family. My father shifted uncomfortably. We weren't fully aware of Claudia's professional development. Well, Richardson said, extending his hand to me, I'm impressed, and I'd like to discuss potential investment opportunities in your expansion plans. My diversification team is always looking for promising ventures. I accepted his handshake, acutely aware of my parents' stunned expressions. I'd be happy to arrange a meeting with our investment relations team. As we concluded the tour and prepared to part ways, Richardson checking his watch and mentioning an early breakfast meeting, my parents lingered awkwardly in the reception area. Our dinner reservation was canceled. My mother finally said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Perhaps, if you haven't eaten. The invitation hung in the air between us. Not quite an apology, not quite reconciliation, but perhaps a starting point. I considered declining, retreating to the safety of professional distance. But something in my mother's uncertain expression, so unlike her usual confidence, made me pause. There's a restaurant near the harbor I've been wanting to try, I offered. I could meet you there in 30 minutes. My father nodded relief, briefly crossing his features. We'll get a table and wait for you. As they left, I remained in the quiet terminal, surrounded by the empire I'd built, from nothing but determination and a dream they'd dismissed. For the first time in years, I felt not the ache of seeking approval, but the steady strength of knowing I didn't require it to be whole. Whatever came of dinner that night, whether a beginning of healing or merely a cordial detente, I would approach it not as the disappointing daughter seeking validation, but as Claudia Williams, founder and CEO of Skylight Aviation, finally comfortable in the knowledge that I had created my own measure of success. The restaurant overlooked Boston Harbor, its glass walls offering a panoramic view of moonlight reflecting off dark water. When I arrived, my parents were already seated at a corner table, their postures stiff with the same formal rigidity I remembered from childhood dinners. "You're looking well," my mother commented, as I sat down, her standard greeting that acknowledged appearance without emotion. "California agrees with you," my father added, studying the wine list with excessive attention. We ordered drinks, then fell into an uncomfortable silence, broken only by observations about the restaurant's decor and the unseasonably mild weather. It was the conversational equivalent of circling a landing pattern, waiting for clearance to approach the actual runway. Finally, after our appetizers arrived, my father set down his fork deliberately. "Your operation is impressive," he said, the admission seeming to physically pain him. "More substantial than we realized." "It's been substantial for years," I replied evenly. "You just weren't interested in seeing it." My mother's lips thinned. "That's hardly fair, Claudia. You moved across the country and barely communicated." "I sent quarterly updates for the first 3 years," I countered. "Press mentions company milestones. The responses, when they came at all, were always about Adam's achievements at the firm." They exchanged glances, the silent communication I'd witnessed throughout childhood, usually preceding a united front against whatever transgression I'd committed. "Perhaps we could have been more—" My father hesitated, seeming to struggle for the appropriate word. "Attentive." From Harold Williams, this qualified admission was unprecedented. I took a sip of wine, allowing the moment to breathe. "I didn't build Skylight to impress you," I said finally. "Though I can't deny that was part of it initially. I built it because it was the company I wanted to see in the world, one that truly understood what personalized service meant." "You certainly impressed James Richardson," my mother observed. "He's not easily impressed." "Because I created something exceptional," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "Not because I followed someone else's blueprint for my life." My father cleared his throat, a familiar signal he was uncomfortable with the conversation's direction. "Your brother has been asking about you, more frequently lately." The sudden pivot to Adam was so typical that I almost laughed. Whenever emotional territory became too challenging, my parents retreated to safer ground, usually my brother's achievements. "Adam and I speak monthly," I said, surprising them. "He called last week." My mother's eyebrows rose. "He didn't mention that." "There's a lot Adam doesn't mention," I replied, thinking of our increasingly candid conversations about his disillusionment with legal practice. As if summoned by our discussion, my father's phone rang with Adam's distinctive ringtone. He glanced at the screen, then to me. "You can answer," I said. "I don't mind." He accepted the call. "Adam, yes, we're at dinner." A pause. "Actually, we're with Claudia." Another longer pause. "Yes, your sister. She's in Boston for business." He listened further, then extended the phone to me with evident confusion. "He wants to speak with you." I accepted the phone. "Adam, Claudia." My brother's voice sounded strained. "Are they being civil? Do you need extraction?" Despite everything, I laughed, a genuine surprise sound. "I'm holding my own." "What's going on?" He sighed heavily. "I just submitted my resignation letter." You what? I stood reflexively moving toward the restaurant's entrance for privacy. When? About an hour ago. Email to the partners copied to HR. His voice held both terror and exhilaration. I can't do it anymore, Claude. The 60-hour weeks, the emotional manipulation, the constant pressure to be someone I'm not. Have you told them? I asked, glancing back at my parents, who watched with undisguised curiosity. Not yet. Wanted to make it official first so I couldn't be talked out of it. He paused. That's actually why I called. I was hoping... Well, you mentioned last month that Skylight might need in-house counsel for the expansion. I leaned against the wall, processing his request. You want to work for me? I want to work with you, he corrected. I've watched you build something authentic while I've been suffocating in other people's expectations. I'm a good lawyer, Claudia. I just don't want to be their kind of lawyer. 5 years ago, I might have rejected him outright payback for the years of smug superiority. But the woman I'd become understood that Adam had been as trapped by our parents' expectations as I had been. Send me your resume, I said, smiling despite myself. We'll need to interview you properly. No nepotism at Skylight. His relief was audible. Thank you. Claudia, I'm sorry for everything. When I returned to the table, my parents were watching expectantly. Is Adam all right? My father asked immediately. I sat down carefully. He's fine. He's also just resigned from the firm. The shock on their faces would have been comical in any other context. That's impossible, my father sputtered. He's being groomed for managing partner. He's unhappy, I said simply. Has been for some time. My mother's hand flew to her pearls. What will he do? Where will he go? He's going to interview for a position as in-house counsel at Skylight. The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face reddened alarmingly. My mother seemed to have stopped breathing entirely. Both of you, my father finally managed. The entire Williams legacy just abandoned. I met his gaze steadily. Not abandoned, reimagined. Adam's still practicing law, just not at the firm. And I'm still building something meaningful, just not what you prescribed. This is your influence, my mother accused, finding her voice. You filled his head with... Mom, I interrupted gently. When was the last time you asked Adam if he was happy? Her mouth opened, then closed without response. Did either of you notice the antidepressants on his bathroom counter when you visited his apartment? I continued. The way he never takes vacation days, how he flinches when his phone rings on weekends. My father's anger deflated visibly. He never said anything. Would you have listened if he did? I asked, not unkindly. The question hung between us, heavy with implication. Our main courses arrived, creating a welcome interruption. We ate in relative silence, the weight of revelation slowly settling around us. We should speak with a family therapist, my mother said suddenly, setting down her fork with determination. All four of us. I nearly choked on my wine. I'm sorry. Your mother's right. My father agreed, surprising me further. We've clearly failed in our communication. The admission so unprecedented from Harold Williams rendered me momentarily speechless. We're not asking for immediate forgiveness. My mother continued, uncharacteristically vulnerable. Just an opportunity to do better. I studied them carefully, looking for the manipulation or conditions that had always accompanied their rare conciliatory gestures in the past. Instead, I saw something unfamiliar: uncertainty, perhaps even regret. I can't speak for Adam, I said finally, but I would be willing to try family therapy, with clear boundaries and expectations. My mother nodded, relief evident in her softened expression. That's all we're asking for now. As we finished dinner and prepared to part ways, my father hesitated, then reached awkwardly for my hand. Your grandmother would be proud of you, he said gruffly. I should have told you that sooner. The unexpected reference to Grandma Rose brought tears to my eyes that I quickly blinked away. Thank you. I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. 6 months later, the formal opening of Skylight's Boston terminal coincided with significant shifts in our family dynamic. Weekly therapy sessions had been uncomfortable, revealing, and occasionally volatile, but also strangely healing. My parents attended the opening gala, my father in his best suit, my mother elegant in midnight blue. As industry leaders, potential clients, and city officials mingled in the terminal I designed, I watched with quiet amazement as my mother introduced me to one of her colleagues. "This is my daughter Claudia," she said, her voice carrying unmistakable pride. She founded Skylight from nothing, built the whole company on her own vision. Later, as I delivered my brief speech thanking everyone who had made the Boston expansion possible, I caught my father's eye in the audience. He nodded once, a simple gesture that contained more approval than 1,000 words. Adam stood beside them, more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. 3 months into his role as Skylight's legal director, he'd already streamlined our contracts process and negotiated favorable terms for our East Coast fuel contracts. The siblings who had once been pitted against each other had found unexpected strength in collaboration. A year after the night my parents boarded my private jet with James Richardson, now one of Skylight's most enthusiastic investors, we gathered for Thanksgiving in my newly purchased Boston apartment. The conversation flowed more easily than it ever had in our family's history, though moments of tension still arose when old patterns threatened to resurface. "I'm thinking of taking flying lessons," Adam announced as we finished dinner. "Commercial license, maybe." My father's fork paused halfway to his mouth. A year ago, he would have dismissed the idea immediately. Now he merely asked, "Why?" Adam shrugged. "Because it looks fun. And because life's too short not to try the things that call to you." My mother reached for her wine rather than her pearls progress in itself. "Just be careful," she said, a mother's concern rather than a matriarch's disapproval. Later that evening, as my parents prepared to leave, my father hesitated in the doorway. "I've been reading about the aviation industry," he said awkwardly. "Fascinating regulatory challenges." Coming from him, it was the equivalent of a standing ovation. The healing wasn't complete. Perhaps it never would be entirely. There were still comments that stung assumptions that grated old hurts that occasionally flared. But we were trying, all of us, to build something new from the broken patterns of the past. That night, after everyone had gone, I took my grandmother's ring from its velvet box and slipped it onto my finger. Then I walked to my apartment's balcony, looking out over Boston Harbor, to the airport beyond, where Skylight's aircraft waited on the ramp. I thought about the scared young woman who had fled to California with 2 suitcases and a broken heart, who had built an empire partly out of determination to prove her worth to parents who couldn't see it, who had discovered in the process that the approval she truly needed had been within herself all along. The people who underestimate you don't determine your altitude. Your wings are your own. I whispered the words to the night sky, hoping somehow Grandma Rose could hear them. Has someone ever underestimated what you could achieve? How did you prove them wrong? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps me continue sharing stories of resilience and triumph. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the greatest success comes from the deepest disappointments.